Continuity and familiarity. That is what Coach Carroll is doing as he's putting together his coaching staff. We'll talk about that plus more on Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for January 31st, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, that's awesome. Show continues to grow each and every day. We thank you for that. If you're checking out the YouTube page, we definitely appreciate you for that. That show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your support, Raider Nation, on both ends. And, of course, on the YouTube page, my man Ari does a fantastic job. You could definitely check him out, shout him out. Without him, man, we wouldn't have the YouTube page, and the attention to detail is second to none, so we definitely appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, as many of you do, 707-654-4693. It's a Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. We'll get your calls and texts as we close out the show and close out the week on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. That in segment number 3, and trust and believe, plenty of feedback to get to, so we'll try to get as much in as possible as we close things out this week. Close out the month, as a matter of fact. Take it a step further. Close out the month of January. Tomorrow will be wake up, wake up, wake up. It's the first of the month. I had to get that in because we're not going to get it in tomorrow, right? That's on Saturday, so I can't shout out the hood holiday, so I just got to go ahead and give you a preview of what it's going to be coming up on tomorrow. But segment number 3, your calls and texts as we close things out. Segment number 2. We had the text and the suggestion from Just Win Will on Wednesday, as a matter of fact. And so we want to go ahead and read that text from him. He wanted to go over free agency and some of the what I like to call non-negotiables, and other guys that I like to talk about as graduates, the ones that the Raiders probably need to say, yeah, it's okay for you to go ahead and graduate on. So we'll go through it. They have plenty of free agents. We're not going to spend a ton of time with each one of them, but there's a handful of them that I look at, especially on the defensive side, that I think are very important to bring back to the silver and black in 2025. So we'll do that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, and it really just has to do with the coaching staff. So we'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create the account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word for $20 off your first purchase. Now, as the Raiders are putting together their coaching staff, and when I say the Raiders, I mean Coach Carroll, he's putting together his coaching staff. I want to go ahead and reiterate what he said on Monday at the press conference when he was asked about the coaching staff, what he's looking for, how he's going to put it together.
I'm really looking for people that have been with me, that understand the philosophy to some extent. I want guys that have never been around me before so that they have to learn what we're all about, and we can watch the process of them learning who we're all about and what we expect. And then I'm hoping that we can maintain some of the terrific coaches that are on the staff too, so we can have the benefit of the insights that they bring and the continuity that they can generate for us. So it's a combination of people that we're looking for, but it's all going to fall back into the same theme. We want ball people. We want guys that love the game, and I mean that's obviously, if nothing else, we've hammered that home today, Johnny. So that's, we want to make sure that we do that. Also, it's important to find people that can help us grow, and challenge us, and those also, I know in my history, I need people to keep me on track. As you can tell, I get pretty juiced up, and I'm going to get going. I need people to keep me balanced. That's why Glenn has been so important over the years, to keep me rolling. But so it'll be a combination to get that done if we do it well, and it's out there for us, and we've got a lot of people that are really interested. We got to do a great job of that.
Put it together with guys that he knows, guys that he's worked with, guys that he hasn't worked with, and guys that are on the current coaching staff. And the thing about it, and the reason why I continue to play that, is not just to play it so you can hear it, but the fact that what he said is exactly what he's doing. And on Thursday, we found out that the Raiders' defensive coaching staff is continuing to come together. We found out about the hiring of John Glenn, the linebackers coach. Now, he's a guy that coached with Coach Carroll in Seattle. He was actually the linebacker coach for 6 seasons in Seattle, and last season he was Washington's assistant special teams coach. So a lot of familiarity there, obviously, with Coach Carroll in Seattle. And in Washington, ding, 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 yeah, you got it, some other Seattle ties. Dan Quinn is the head coach there, and obviously he was the defensive coordinator before in Seattle. But under John Glenn, the linebacker coach, Seattle had some real deal success with their linebackers. Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright, Michael Kendricks, Jordan Brooks, Cody Barton. Now, I know what you're saying. Q, those are all really good linebackers. They can be coached up by you and me, which you're right. They could, but they had a ton of success with their linebackers, and he was the guy that was leading the charge. Bobby Wagner, I mean, he's still going at it strong, was a key cog in the second, not the secondary, but the linebacking room for Washington. Really, just the defense in general, big-time leader for Washington this last year as they got one game away from Super Bowl 59. So Bobby Wagner is Bobby Wagner. KJ Wright, he was fantastic for Seattle. And even the year that he played with the Raiders, he still did some really good things, that provided some really good leadership, and helped the Raiders get to the playoffs in 2021. Made that run under Rich Bisaccia. So KJ Wright, we know what he brings to the table. Michael Kendricks, remember him? I was always a big fan of Michael Kendricks. Going all the way back to Cal, I thought he was a heck of a linebacker. He played in Philadelphia, was a heck of a linebacker. Seattle, same thing. That dude was just uber talented. So I was always a big Michael Kendricks fan. Jordan Brooks, you got to shout him out. He came from Texas Tech. It's not that often that there's too many defensive players, defensive studs that come from the Big 12, let alone Texas Tech. Now, I know the Raiders have one right now in Tyree Wilson, and we're hoping that he lives up to being the number 7 overall pick like he was a couple seasons ago. I think he's getting better, continuing to get better, and obviously continuity on defense is going to help him get exactly where he needs to be. And Cody Barton was fantastic as well. So, I mean, again, those guys, I could probably coach them up. You could probably coach them up, and they play at a high level. But I just think it's good that John Glenn, not the astronaut, but John Glenn, the linebacker coach, being hired by the Raiders. And again, going back to what Coach Carroll said, guys that he's worked with, guys that he's coached with, and John Glenn is exactly that. So if you're looking at the defense, Patrick Graham, defensive coordinator, he's back. That's a good thing. We talked about it on Thursday's show. It became official early in the morning on Thursday that he was, in fact, back. They got the deal signed, sealed, and delivered. So Patrick Graham is officially back. That is great. Great news, continuity. Talked about it quite a bit on Thursday's show, but very excited that he's back just because, again, the defense has done some really good things. And even when they dealt with a ton of injuries, the defense was still able to perform. And the defensive line as well with Robbie Leonard. And we found out that Robbie Leonard, in fact, is coming back. Now, he's a guy that interviewed for the defensive coordinator on Monday, but has decided that he's going to return as a defensive line coach. So you got a 1-2 punch with Patrick Graham and Rob Leonard. You're already doing really, really well. And then, of course, the linebacker coach, as I mentioned, Coach John Glenn, special teams, Tom McMahon. Now, it's funny. I will say this real quick before we get to segment number 2. I was, getting a lot of pushback on Patrick Graham when I was saying that, oh, man, that's great news that he's coming back. I had a lot of people saying, yeah, not really. Didn't think that Patrick Graham's defense was that good. And I was like, whoa. That was a big surprise for me. And again, I don't mind your opinion, but I was thinking like, man, there were so many people when Pete Carroll was talking about as the potential head coach. A lot of people were like, yeah, great. He's going to bring a bunch of Seattle guys. He's going to bring Gus Bradley back. He's going to bring Ken Norton Jr. back, and it's going to just be bad, right? And he didn't. He didn't bring Gus Bradley back. He didn't bring the cover 3 defense that we all got familiar with when he was in Seattle and really successful. He stuck with what has been working for the Raiders. And I know that Patrick Graham's defense hasn't been top 5. I know it wasn't top 10 or whatever the case may be, but it did a lot of the heavy lifting when the Raiders offense couldn't do anything. So that's why I think that's a really good move to bring him back, and especially Robbie Leonard. Like I said, that defensive line never missed a beat, even though Max was out for an extended amount of time. Christian Wilkins was out for an extended amount of time. Malcolm Kuntz never made it to the season because he tore his ACL in the preseason. Like there was a lot of key cogs that were missing on that defensive line. They still found ways to eat. Even Kalavon Chason, who was picked up off of waivers, and he went there and thrived and had his best season statistically since he's been in the league. A former first-round pick of Jacksonville, picked up off waivers, didn't even play all season, but still was very successful. So I think that is really good, and it feels like the defense is starting to come together. And Raider Nation, don't be surprised when the defense is the one that's going to lead the team in 2025. We talked about identity on Thursday's show. The identity is going to be led by the defense once again. The only difference between 2025 and 2024 is the head man in charge, Pete Carroll, knows how to get it done. Offensively, still haven't heard anything. Haven't heard anything about any other coaches besides Darrell Bevell that have been interviewed. And Bevell obviously spent a lot of time in Seattle. It's funny, I was listening to the radio on Thursday night when I was on my way home, and there was someone from Seattle talking to my guy Steve Cofield from our sister station, ESPN Las Vegas, and he said, tell me about Darrell Bevell. And he said, man, he was the best offensive coordinator that we ever had here in Seattle under Pete Carroll. And, yeah, of course, he's the one who called the play, the pass the ball at the goal line as opposed to hand the ball to beast mode against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. But he said he was scapegoated for the fall to be the fall guy, right? He said, but he did a really good job. And I know that, he's had numbers that look good. He's been a good coordinator until he wasn't, right? Until it kind of soured and staled out, and then Pete Carroll had to move on from him. He's been in Miami, passing game coordinator, working under Mike McDaniel. So maybe he picked up some of his tendencies and some of his creative play calling as well. Again, I'm not saying Darrell Bevell's going to get the job, but so far he's the only one that I know and I've seen reported as officially interviewed. So that's the side of the ball that needs to continue to get some looks, right? Guys like Edgar Bennett, who's been with the Raiders for quite a while as a wide receiver coach, maybe he's going to come back. Maybe he's going to get a look. Hell, maybe he's going to get a look as offensive coordinator. I'm not too sure. But that's the side of the ball that really needs probably the most attention. So we'll see what direction that goes. But again, going back to Patrick Graham as the DC, that allows Pete Carroll and company to focus more on the offense, because Patrick Graham could say, I got this. I got the defense. Don't worry. We'll be okay. So that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Just continuing to talk about the coaching staff as it's starting to round into shape and come to form for Pete Carroll and the Silver and Black. Well, looking at the Raiders and their current roster, they've got a whole laundry list of free agents. Who are the non-negotiables and who needs to graduate? It's coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Gametime. And one thing that's super exciting, so much fun, that's attending NFL games all the way live, right? Being at the stadium, being in the building is awesome. And I know the playoffs are over. The only game left is the Super Bowl. The Pro Bowl doesn't count. The Super Bowl is the only one left. And of course, that's going to be electric, right? And obviously it's the Eagles and the Chiefs, but that's going to be an electric atmosphere there in New Orleans. But just in general, being at NFL games is so much fun. Gametime can help you get to NFL games. It can help you get to basketball games. It can help you get to comedy shows, theater, whatever the case may be. If it's live, Gametime has you covered. They have a new feature called Gametime Picks. It makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So it's real simple. You want to take the guesswork out of buying tickets? Do it right now with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. What time is it? Game time. I also like the LOCKEDONNFL. I cannot get that Method Man out of my head. METHOD, man. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to go ahead and take a quick look. Again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time with them because the Raiders have a lot of free agents, but want to take a quick look at their free agents and talk about who I believe are non-negotiables and guys that I believe are going to graduate. And where did this come from? Well, our guy, Just Win Will, hit us with a text. He said, Q, my guy, Just Win Will here. I've got a fun game possible segment for you. We've got 29 free agents in this cycle. Which guys are you re-signing? Which guys are you letting walk? Who will be the surprising signing? In-house free agents? Who will be the surprise that ends up going? We've got to take care of our in-house guys first, in my opinion, before bringing in guys from other teams. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts of the nation? Thank you, Q. Appreciate you beyond words. Thanks for letting me be a part of the electric circus. LOL. That's from Just Win Will. Fantastic text, my man. Fantastic text. So I'm going to go through this really quickly because, again, there's 29 of these guys, as you mentioned, and I just don't want to spend too much time on one guy. So I'm looking at this list right here. Adam Butler, Alexander Madison, Amir Abdullah, Andrews Pete, Charles Snowden, Cody Whitehair, DJ Turner, Darnay Holmes, Desmond Ritter, Divine Diablo, Harrison Bryant, Isaiah Palamao, Janarius Robinson, John Jenkins, Jordan Meredith, Clavon Chason, Kanai Moaga, Luke Masterson, Malcolm Kuntz, Marcus Epps, Matthew Butler, Nate Hobbs, Robert Spillane, Sam Webb, Terrace Marshall Jr., Trayvon Merrick, and Zachary Carter. Whew. That was a lot. That was a lot of dudes right there. So we'll go ahead and I'll start with the defense because honestly, I think it's the defense is where the non-negotiables are as opposed to the guys that are going to graduate. Like I really look at the defense and say the more that you bring on back on defense that are productive players, the better. I look at Adam Butler and I know that he wants to get paid. I happen to think that he's probably going to end up walking. He's 31 years old, right? But he did have a lot of production. I could see them bringing him back, but I don't think he's going to break the bank like he wants. I mean, when we were in training camp, he specifically said, I need to get on the field more and prove who I am because I want to get paid. I don't know if the Raiders are going to look at Adam Butler as a 31-year-old defensive tackle and say, we're going to go ahead and give him some big money, even though he did produce. So I can see Adam Butler ended up being a guy that ends up walking unless he agrees to a deal that is I hate to say team friendly because it shouldn't be about being team friendly, but we know how the NFL operates. Alexander Mattison, running back, I think he's gone. Amir Abdullah, he's been a really good, productive free agent. I think he's gone, right? I mean, he's been in the league 10 plus years. I think that it's just time for him to move on. And this is a really deep draft when it comes to running backs. So you look at Madison and Abdullah. I think that you say thank you for what you've done, but you can go ahead and test free agency. Now, if they don't get a free agent deal, and this goes with Butler too, if they don't get a free agent deal, I could see, the Raiders saying, all right, well, we didn't get this guy or this guy. So they won't be a priority. They won't be guys that are signed in the first wave of free agency. Let's put it like that. Andrews Pete, the left tackle, I'd probably let him walk. Straight up, I'd let him walk. I think he was brought in to provide a little bit of, veteran leadership along that offensive line. But the Raiders in their offense, and we don't know who their offensive line coach is going to be, but that thing needs to get solidified. And even backups need to be solid, more solid than Andrews Pete. So I think let him go. Charles Snowden, he did really well in preseason. He got in trouble with the alleged DUI, right? He got arrested for that. Obviously, it's still going to play out in court. So I don't know how they feel about that. I don't know if they, are interested in bringing him back. He was good in preseason. I don't think he was great in the regular season. Again, he wouldn't be a guy that I would prioritize coming back. Cody Whitehair, the left guard, I thought he did a pretty good job. Matter of fact, I thought he did a really good job at time for the Raiders in 2024. So he's a guy that they might want to bring back. Again, this offensive line really has to be put together. They got to decide, more importantly, I'm sure Colton Miller is fine at the left tackle spot, but is JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson, is he going to be a left guard? Is he going to be a center? What are you going to do with that? That's one of the first questions they got to figure out. Dylan Parham, they got to figure out where they're going to play him consistently. They got to figure out what they're going to do at the right tackle spot. And I think that'll answer the question when it comes to Cody Whitehair. DJ Turner, okay, right? Again, not a priority. So far, I haven't hit any priorities. Darnay Holmes, cornerback. Now, I like him. Obviously, he's known Patrick Graham. Patrick Graham knows him. Darnay Holmes came on pretty strong, and we know that the secondary needs to be, pretty solid for Pete Carroll and his liking. So I would not be surprised to see Darnay Holmes come back. I'm not saying he's a priority, but I do think that he's a player that they're going to look at and say, yeah, you know what, we could use him. What he was able to do, I mean, he came up with ball production in 2024. He was able to attack the quarterback, got a sack, got some TFL, some tackles for loss. I think Darnay Holmes played a pretty good role for the Raiders in 2024. I'd like to see him come back. Desmond Ridder, goodbye. When they say you are the weakest link, goodbye. Right? Yeah, he's gone. The quarterback that they picked up off the Arizona Cardinals practice squad, don't need to bring him back. Now here's where it gets tricky. Divine Diablo, linebacker. When he went out, the Raiders linebackers struggled a little bit. I would say bring Divine Diablo back. Now I'm not saying give him a monster deal, but I would definitely say bring him back. Just, again, for that defense and that continuity. I just think that, especially with John Glenn being hired up now, you bring him back. You bring Robert Spillane. I haven't even got to Robert Spillane, but, yeah, definitely. Now, that's a priority. Right? You want to talk about guys to bring back. Robert Spillane's definitely a priority, but I think you bring Divine Diablo back. Tight end Harrison Bryant, you could probably let him walk. Isaiah Palamau, he's a restricted free agent, not an unrestricted free agent, but, yeah, I'd bring him back. I'd bring him back, no doubt about it. And there's a couple other guys that I didn't point out that were restricted free agents like Desmond Ridder. I'd still let him walk. DJ Turner, again, not priorities at all. But Isaiah Palamau, definitely want to bring him back, right? What he was able to do, especially at the end of the season, being able to attack the ball catcher, the wide receiver, dislodge the ball from their hands and come up with he was coming on strong at the end of the season. He's one of those guys that you wish he had a couple more games just to see what he can do. So there's no doubt Isaiah Palamau is the guy you bring back. Janarius Robinson, probably let him go. John Jenkins, talked about Adam Butler being 31. John Jenkins is 36. I think that you go into the draft and you probably get a couple defensive tackles to provide some extra depth. Maybe you split the difference. Maybe it's John Jenkins or Adam Butler. I would pick Adam Butler before John Jenkins, but I don't know about the money when it comes to Butler, how much he's going to cost. Jordan Meredith is the one. Wait, hold on. I said Cody White here. Jordan Meredith was the one that was really solid. I'm all of a sudden getting my left guards confused. Jordan Meredith is the one that you probably need to bring him back. He actually played a bigger role in 2024 than most people expected. Most people expected Cody Whitehair and Andrews Pete to be really solid, but no, Jordan Meredith was the one. I'm tripping. Jordan Meredith was the one that you really want to bring him back. I do think so. K'Lavon Chason, definitely think you should bring him back. That's I think a non-negotiable. Kanai Moaga, the linebacker, he's a restricted free agent, so I think that you could bring him back if you want to. Same thing with Luke Masterson, restricted free agent. It's not going to cost you very much to bring you back. And again, the linebackers, they can use those guys on special teams and, of course, in the linebacking room as well. Now here it goes. Malcolm Kuntz, edge rusher. Absolutely. Bring him back. I know he didn't play in 2024 because he tore his ACL, but, man, I thought he was going to have a big-time season. So Malcolm Kuntz is a non-negotiable. Bring him back. So far, my only two non-negotiables, Malcolm Kuntz, K'Lavon Chason, so I guess I got three, and Jordan Meredith on the offensive line. We're doing this on the fly, clearly. Marcus Epps, he's gonna graduate. He's going to move on. Matthew Butler, I know he was a draft pick. He's a restricted free agent, 26 years old. I mean, you can bring him back if you want. Nate Hobbs, he's an unrestricted free agent. I love Nate Hobbs when he's out there on the field because of what he brings to the table, but he gets injured quite a bit. I don't think he's played one full season without getting injured. I think you make a decision between Nate Hobbs and Trayvon Merrick. Which one are you going to bring back? Which one are you going to commit to? Because they're both going to want big money. Nate Hobbs plays a very tough position, that slot corner position, and he's really good at it when he's out there on the field. So I think he's going to command some pretty good money. I think you make a decision between Nate Hobbs and Trayvon Merrick. But I could see Patrick Graham trying to pound the table for both those guys because he knows what they bring to the table. Robert Spillane, I already talked about him. Definitely bring him back. He's Patrick Graham's guy. Like that's Patrick Graham on the field, Robert Spillane. So that's a non-negotiable. Sam Webb, that's one of those where you look at and you say, if he comes back, cool. If he doesn't, that's cool too. Terrace Marshall Jr., the wide receiver, if he comes back, that's cool. But if not, that's cool too. And then Zachary Carter, not necessary to come back. So, I mean, that's basically, and he's a restricted free agent anyway. So really, when you look at it, going through the list, and I'll try to go through this really quickly and wrap up segment number 2. I'm looking at Trayvon Merrick or Nate Hobbs. You can split the difference. I don't think they're going to bring both back, especially because they're both going to cost some pretty good money. You pick one of the two, Trayvon or Nate Hobbs. Robert Spillane, yes, non-negotiable, bring him back. Malcolm Kuntz, yes, non-negotiable, bring him back. K'Lavon Chason, non-negotiable, bring him back. Jordan Meredith, same thing, bring him back. Isaiah Palamau, definitely bring him back. Divine Diablo, bring him back. It's not a non-negotiable, but I would prefer you bring him back. And then you pick one between John Jenkins and Adam Butler. And I would pick Adam Butler as long as the price is right. So just win, Will. I hope that made sense. That was a lot to digest. That was a lot of guys to go through really quickly. But those are the guys that I would look at and say, okay, if I could bring back some guys, that's who I'd bring back. Again, either Butler or Jenkins. Those one of the two. You don't have to bring back both. Bring back Divine Diablo, Isaiah Palamau, Jordan Meredith, K'Lavon Chason, Kuntz, Hobbs or Trayvon Merrick, and Robert Spillane. There you go. It's as clean as that. That's what I got for you for segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. You can let me know your thoughts. 707-654-4693. We close things out with your calls and texts. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about another great sponsor here on the show, and that is PrizePicks. The big game, it's almost here. There's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks. It's the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions with a B in winnings awarded, PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. This is how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 players' projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw for 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you are cashing out, my friend. This week, you can look for anything, right? Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley. Like, there's so many different ways to win. You can do it. They got promo tabs to tell any of the super sweet Millie winners big game lineups. And if you tell a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Got a text from the 541. Said, and no name on it, Being an Oregon Duck fan and alumni, I watched a lot of Dillon Gabriel last season. I think he could really be a good fit for my Raiders. He's not a prototype NFL QB, being a little shorter than one would like, but he's maybe the smartest quarterback I've seen. More importantly, he knows his own limitations, doesn't think he's so talented, and he can move mountains, as so many college football studs have thought about themselves coming into the pros only to be disappointed. Additionally, Gabriel's one of the most accurate passers on the run that I've ever seen, as he always keeps his eyes downfield, even while scrambling to escape pressure. That's a real rare trait in a rookie. He'll probably be available when the Raiders are on the clock, as many are dismissing him because of his height issue. But please, God, no Jalen Milroe. You can't find a less self-aware quarterback, LOL. That's a text from the 541. Thanks so much for that. Dillon Gabriel at the Senior Bowl came in at 5'10", and he hasn't really had a very good week so far. He does have a very strong arm, but he's been really erratic as far as accuracy goes. And, it's kind of hard to judge. We'll see the game coming up this weekend. But he has a lot of production in college. Obviously, he's got a lot of starts, a lot of experience. He could be a guy that the Raiders look at. And I know that this staff, especially Pete Carroll, is not going to look at guys and say, oh, you're short, you can't play for us, because, well, he didn't do that with Russell Wilson. Now, Russell Wilson wasn't 5'10", but Dillon Gabriel does have a heck of a strong arm, especially as a lefty as well. So he could be a guy that's in line. I'm not going to say he isn't. I will say I agree with you with Jalen Milroe, and I'm an Alabama fan. I've said it so many times, though. Jalen Milroe should have gone back to school. Jalen Milroe has a strong arm. It's funny, my guy Vinny Bonsignore is in Mobile, Alabama right now at the Senior Bowl, and he really likes Jalen Milroe. And he's like, man, he had a really good deep ball. And I was like, yeah, I know. He has a really good deep ball. He's like, yeah, man, he's really strong and athletic. I was like, yeah, I know. He's like, well, the short and intermediate stuff is a little bit. I was like, yeah, I know. That's where he struggles. And then he turns the ball over. And once he turns it over once, he's turning it over 4 times, right? I mean, it's a snowball effect with Jalen Milroe. So we'll see what happens with him. I don't know. Someone's going to fall in love with him at the combine. He's going to wow everyone at the combine. I would pass on Milroe, though. That's for sure. So thanks so much for that text. I appreciate you. Next time you hit us up, let us know your name as well. Up next, got a call from Jordan in Oregon. He's calling to talk about Patrick Graham returning as DC, and also talks about Tom Brady as part owner of the Raiders, and has a little funny little story that goes with TB12. Here he is, Jordan in Oregon.
What's going on? Community Jordan in Oregon. Wanted to call in, man. Fired up about the Patrick Graham being retained news. That's good stuff. Just got me thinking, that's a huge chunk of just the team. You could argue that's the half of what we have going on is defense. You got to have core defensive guys that are willing to stick around, and a lot of those guys play a key role in special teams too. So having some continuity, what Carroll's done with the staff, I'm pretty stoked about. The offense clearly needed some juice, needed somebody else with some other ideas, but defensively and special teams wise, I just have always felt those two kind of go together, and pretty fired up about that. Hey, the second thing I want to mention, it kind of hit me the other day, just more of a funny point than anything, but Tom Brady being on the Raiders, ownership team now, you could say, and being part of the decision-making part of the Raiders, got me thinking, and I'll just leave it off with this, man. I wonder if any part of his decision to want to come help the Raiders be great again is to protect his own legacy, and the idea that, he could help be a part of what team could take down the Chiefs, and ultimately, kind of not let Mahomes take over all those records, not let him take it over as far as most Super Bowl wins, which would be huge. I mean, for Brady to be able to help create, a culture and a team that won't allow the best quarterback, arguably since him, to come in and just straight dominate and shred every record he has. I don't know. I'm sure there's a little juice there. Doesn't mean it's necessarily the whole reason, but I'm sure when he thinks about it and thinks about the team he wants to create, that there's a small part of him that thinks about that. Like, why wouldn't he want to, knock the Chiefs off and keep Mahomes from creeping up on his legacy? But anyway, peace out, bro. Appreciate you.
Jordan, thanks for the call. It's great to hear from you. And as far as I'm concerned, having Graham back is good. Really good. Like I said earlier, I got a little bit of pushback when I was saying that I thought that was great that he was returning, and Robbie Leonard as well. But, man, for everyone that did not want to see Gus Bradley in the cover 3 return, I think they should be happy to see Patrick Graham have that continuity, understand what you're going to get out of the defense. And now with Pete Carroll, he can even help make that defense better. So I'm excited about it. As far as Brady goes, I'm sure that there's some of him that doesn't want Patrick Mahomes to end up having a better legacy than him. I don't think that that's why he bought into the team, though. Now that he's part minority owner, yeah, he might be ramped up a little bit more to say, yeah, let's try to stop this dude before he starts breaking all my records. But I don't think at all that had to do with why he bought into the team. Remember, he bought into the Aces as well. So now he's a part owner of the WNBA team, the Aces, and also now the Raiders. So thanks so much, Jordan, for the call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Raider Sanchez. Hey, Q. Raider Sanchez again out of Nebraska. The last time I texted in, I was hoping for AP to be fired and hire an offensive coach. Well, 1 out of 2 isn't so bad. I could take a defensive-minded head coach if they have the kind of track record Pete has. The Telesco firing shocked me, but seeing the potential with John Spytek has me fully on board. I have more of a request than a question, but would like your input as well. Neither Spytek nor Pete have the best history with building a formidable offensive line, an area I still feel we need to improve on. If you get a chance, would you be able to ask what their philosophy is for the trenches and how much they want to invest in them? What do you think yourself, Q? Thanks for everything you do. Sending my love to Kimani and the family. That's from Raider Sanchez. Thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. And, yeah, I think they understand about the offensive line. Something Pete Carroll addressed on his in the press conference on Monday, when I asked about the quarterback, and he said there's a lot more that goes to the quarterback than just the quarterback because everyone's not an elite quarterback, right? So you have to have a solid offensive line. You have to have a really good run game. You have to have a really good defense. You have to have good weapons. So I think he understands that. And the good thing is the Raiders have so much salary cap space, cap space, that they'll be able to do that if they need to. If they need to go out and bring some guys in, they can do that. If they want to draft some guys, they can do that. They have about 10 draft picks as of right now, and they have over $100 million in cap space. Now, obviously, some of that's going to be spent on their guys as we went through all their guys that they have in segment number 2, which is a ton of them. But they have the flexibility to be able to get it done. I think that they're definitely going to try to invest heavily in the offensive line, especially because I'm sure they don't think that they're going to get an elite quarterback anytime soon. There's not an elite quarterback on the roster. There's not an elite quarterback, in my opinion, in the draft. There's some really good ones, but I don't think there's any elite quarterbacks in the draft, and there's no elite quarterbacks in free agency. So that's not happening. So what are you going to do? You've got to be able to supplement that and build around the quarterbacks that you have. But thanks so much for that text. I definitely appreciate you. Let's get a call in from Wine Country Raider. He's calling to talk about the trading Max Crosby conversation that has been going on the last few days here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Here's Wine Country Raider.
What's up, Q? It's Wine Country Raider. Just calling in real quick. All right, only a couple of people have called in and just brought up this subject, but if I hear anybody else call and say, "What do you think about trading Max Crosby?" It's not happening. It's not going to happen. He's not going anywhere. Save your breath. He's not going anywhere. He's going to be the Raiders. We're not going to redo a Khalil Mack. I'm extremely traumatized. I got PTSD from that happening. It took me years to even donate that jersey, my Khalil Mack jersey, because I was still like, I kept waking up. Maybe he's coming back. Maybe he's coming back. And if he comes back, and I donated that jersey, so be it. But we're not getting rid of Max Crosby. It's just not going to happen. I'm pumped up for this new regime. I think we got it right. I'm glad we're bringing back some guys. I think it's huge for our free agents that are worth bringing back. Good for the continuity of the defense. We haven't had anything consistent in forever, so I think this is great. I'm looking forward to what we do in free agency and draft coming up. And shout out to everybody in Raider Nation. Shout out to you, Q. Appreciate everything you do. First listen of the day. And Wine Country Raider out.
Thank you for the call. I appreciate you. And yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. That's what I was talking about on Thursday's show. But the one thing that I learned from the Khalil Mack experience is that you can never say never in the NFL. When you think something's just no way something's going to happen, it could. But the way that the staff was shouting out Max at the press conference on Monday, and their personalities, the way that they want to compete, the way that, they want to build the team, the kind of attitudes and the players that they want to have, Max Crosby fits the description, right? So, he was there at the presser. Looked like things were really good with him, between him and Pete Carroll after the presser. It looked like he was ready to get to work, even though his foot's in a boot. And it's funny because on his podcast, the Rush podcast, he was asked about why is it so important that he was at the presser. He answers that, also touches on the trade conversation and being a Raider and a little bit more. Here's Max Crosby talking about why it was important to be at the press conference from his Rush podcast.
I was excited to go and hear them talk and speak. And I'm excited to have more conversation moving forward. And I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, it's just, it was good to finally like be in the same room as them and get to chop it up. So yeah, I feel like people just, there's always going to be the clickbait, especially this time of year. I don't know why. Like, it's just funny. Like the last 2 years, like the trade rumors and all that has been like out of hand. And like now it's just like at an all-time high. Cause like, I feel like everything I say, it's just like they take it in a certain way. And it might be even the other fan bases that make our fans get mad. And then they're like, then all of a sudden they'd start turning on me. And I'm like, bro, I'm just minding my own business. I'm just in the building every day at 6 a.m. and working my ass off, minding my own business. Like, oh, he's a diva now. He's talking, he's da-da-da-da. I'm like, the fans that switch up, they weren't fans in the first place, and they weren't really there for you anyway. So, like, they're just revealing themselves. You know what I mean? I've done nothing but give my heart and soul every single day to this organization. And as of right now, that's what it's going to continue being. You know what I mean? I'm never going to change who I am. And like I said, we talked about it. Like, obviously the contract situation, all that stuff, that will be addressed and we'll move accordingly, one step at a time. But you know what I mean? It's like, bro, I've been a Raider through and through, since the day I got here. And it's funny how people change when, especially like during the, just coming off of what we went through, people have their question marks. What's the team going to do moving forward? Blah, blah, blah. Should we move him? Should we do this? And it's like, people just buy into it. Like once there's like a little smoke, and all of a sudden it's like people turn it to a wildfire, and it really just appeared out of thin air. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm just working my ass off every day, minding my business. I'm doing incredible. I'm happy. Got the best people in the world around me, including y'all. Like, life is great. So yeah, you just got to take everything with a grain of salt. People change all the time, and people are going to love you. Sometimes they're going to love what love what you're doing. Sometimes they're going to hate what you're doing. But at the end of the day, like, I got that Floyd Mayweather, that video, I watch it almost every single day. But he's like, no matter how good you're doing, they're going to have something to say. No matter how bad you're doing, they're going to have something to say. So do what you want to do. That's all that matters at the end of the day. And I live by that. So shout out to Floyd. So
there's Max Crosby. And, there's a couple of words here and there, a little bit of the language that, doesn't like just scream that, oh, there's no chance that I'm not going to be anywhere else. Right. He's a Raider as of right now. I mean, there's little key phrases that he uses. But again, he's got to get his contract situation taken care of. That's going to be first and foremost. And once that gets done, then he'll be good to go. He's got a couple years on his deal, but he has no guaranteed money. And a guy like Max Crosby with his skins on the wall is not going to play for no guaranteed money. It's just not going to happen. So I'm pretty confident that come September, he's going to be on the field for the Raiders. But again, until everything gets taken care of with that contract, anything is possible, especially ahead of the draft, as we're, months away from the draft. You never know if a team calls with some crazy offer and the Raiders like, well, you just never know. But again, I'm with you. I just don't see that happening at all. But thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. We'll close things out with a text from Rum Runner Raider. Say that 3 times fast. Hey, Q, Rum Runner. No, say it again. Hey, Q, Rum Runner Raider, formerly Ghost. I like your other name. It was a lot easier to say. Ghost is simple. Rum Runner Raider is not. Triple R. That's what I need to call you. Here's a text from Triple R. He's in the 804. It says, can the nation please stop talking about trading away Max Crosby for draft picks? First, there isn't a quarterback in this draft worth trading away Max for. Second, with Carroll in as coach and PG and Rob Leonard back, it is clear that we want Max here. And finally, maybe most important, Max is the face of the franchise. His work ethic, his dedication to the Shield. Max is everything that Al would have wanted in a Raider. Can we just rally around Max and the team and move forward? Love the show, love this team, and love where we're headed. Raiders. That's from Triple R. Rum Runner Raider, formerly Ghost. And yeah, I mean, again, going back to what I just said, I don't see him going anywhere. Again, some of the language that he said in his own podcast, his own words, leaves the door open a little bit of a crack. But yeah, I don't see it. And I was recording a TV show for our local Fox 5 here. It's called Sin City Beat. And the host of it asked, well, if you could trade with, say Cleveland to get in position to go get Shador from 6 to 2, would you trade Max Crosby? And my answer was, you don't have to. You could trade from 6 to 2 without trading Max Crosby. You could trade draft capital and get up to number 2. You can trade, the number 6 overall pick, next year's number 1 overall pick, and maybe, like a second or whatever. Like, you can get there. It's not that big of a jump. 6 to 2 is not going to cost you a ton. So you can do it if you want to. You don't have to trade Max Crosby. But that is always something that people are going to talk about, at least until the Raiders get their quarterback, and then maybe that conversation will be off the table. But thanks so much for your text. I do appreciate it. That's going to do it for the show. That's going to do it for the week. That's going to do it for the month. All right, tomorrow, first of the month. Wake up, wake up, wake up. February 1. So, yeah, there it is. And the next time we do a show, obviously that'll be on Monday. That'll be coming to you live from New Orleans. We travel on Saturday. Hopefully everything goes well. We know how it is when I'm traveling. Things never go well. So hopefully everything is good. It's going to be a busy week there in New Orleans for Super Bowl 59 on Radio Row. And, I'm sure we'll have a ton to bring to the table here on the podcast. So here we go. The season is winding down on the road again, but the Locked On Raiders podcast continues to roll on. So until Monday, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, enjoy your weekend, and most importantly, as always, just win, baby.